That fake sunset glow from Omega-7 station was spilling through the windows of Quasar's joint, making long shadows creep across all the chrome and fake wood. Madison Hartwell kept a tray of Andromedan suds steady while her sharp eyes were glued to the new guy who'd punched in exactly 17 minutes ago. The way he moved was all wrong. Not clumsy wrong. Nah, this was soldier wrong. The way he clutched that serving tray screamed he was used to hauling gear, and his boots made that telltale magnetic clack of combat soles on the station deck, not the quiet scuff of some waiter's shoes. 8 whole months slinging drinks at Quasar's had taught Madison how to read the room in the sketchiest watering hole in the outer rim. This cantina was supposed to be neutral turf for a dozen different critters doing business that was either barely legal or would get you spaced by the Galactic Council. But tonight's crowd was the usual Thursday bunch. Some cat-faced merchants jawing about mining rights over their rock candy drinks, a table of Vorton gearheads toasting their latest gizmo with booze that cost more than Madison's rent, and the odd bounty hunter nursing a synth bourbon, pretending he wasn't casing the joint for his next paycheck. Madison had come by her jumpiness the hard way, got it straight from her ma, who'd made it out of the colony raids on Europa 12. All those years bunkered down in shelters, counting exits and memorizing faces, had turned into a gut feeling that made her clock every little thing that was out of place. What started as some bad memories from being a kid had turned into a real knack for her job at Quasar's, where spotting trouble before it popped off was worth more than any fancy hospitality degree. The fake server, some guy named Garrett they said was covering for a sick regular, had been asking all the wrong questions, not about the specials, but about lines of sight and the quickest ways out. He seemed real interested in the northwest corner booth, where Mr. Draovar set up shop every Thursday night from 2100 hours to exactly 22:30. Draovar looked like a demon straight out of some old Earth myth, 7 feet of scaly muscle with curved horns that had scraped the ceiling if he stood up straight. His kind, the Dracones, came from some heavy gravity rock where you either became the baddest thing in the valley or you became dinner. His wings, folded up on his back like a leather cape, would twitch every now and then when he moved, showing off these patterns that were supposed to be his whole family history if you knew how to read them. Madison sure as hell couldn't read the squiggles, but she'd gotten good at reading Draovar's mood from the way the gold in his eyes would shift, and how his tail, thick as her waist, would thump out a beat on the floor when he was weighing the odds or thinking about getting violent. Tonight, Draovar was flying solo, which was weird. His huge body made the reinforced booth look like a doll's chair, and his clawed hand swallowed the custom jug of fermented drake root he always ordered. An old-as-dirt war sword, its blade covered in marks from before anybody even thought of standard writing, was leaning against the table leg. That thing wasn't for show. Madison had seen the security feed of Draovar slicing some wannabe assassin clean in two with one swing. 3 months back, the station's janitors needed heavy-duty chemicals to get the stains out. The phony server did another lap around the main room, each pass getting him a little bit closer to Draovar. Madison clocked how he kept his left arm bent just so, hiding something bulky under his uniform jacket. The work clothes were supposed to be smart fabric that fit anybody, but they couldn't hide the shape of a military-issue pulse rifle. "Hartwell Table 12 wants their appetizers," buzzed Rosenberg, the shift boss. His forearms made him a whiz behind the bar, but damn useless at reading people. He hadn't seen their new guy check his watch for the 5th time in 10 minutes, each look followed by a little shift in his stance like a man on a deadline. She dropped off the appetizers, some fancy shellfish from the water planet Aquarius Prime, all while keeping one eye on the fake server's location. The kitchen crew didn't know him from Adam either. She'd checked with them on the sly while grabbing the order. The Quellian cook, who had a memory like a steel trap, swore on her ancestors she'd never laid eyes on Garrett before, even though the bosses claimed he was a regular hire from 3 weeks ago. That little bombshell made Madison take a closer look at the guy's ID badge when he was at the service station. The hollow seal looked legit at a glance, but that quantum shimmer, the faint glow you could only see from the right angle, was gone. It was a good fake, enough to fool a tourist, but not someone who'd spent 8 months learning every security trick in the house. Station Omega-7 was a weird mix of straight-up business and shady dealings, all living side by side in a delicate dance. The Galactic Council had a security detail, sure, but their authority ended at the public areas. Places like Quasars lived in the gray, where private muscle and handshake deals kept the body count low. Most nights, that balance held. But Madison knew the signs for when things were about to go sideways, the way the chatter would die down when certain folks walked in, how the regular security guys would suddenly have to be somewhere else, and that electric feeling in the air right before the professionals went to work. Dreovar showing up at Quasars every Thursday was the stuff of station legend. His crew, the one nobody ever named, was understood to run most of the illegal salvage in 3 whole sectors, and they did their business with a quiet power that made even hardened smugglers break a sweat. Madison had watched him long enough to see he wasn't just one thing. He could talk your ear off about ancient lizard poetry one minute, then hash out deals that for sure involved turf wars and probably a few funerals. He tipped enough to cover her rent for a month, but his enemies had a nasty habit of just vanishing into the black between star systems. The fake server was easing himself into the service nook that gave him the cleanest shot at Dreovar's booth. Madison's heart kicked into overdrive when she saw the setup. It was a pro move, not much room for return fire, a straight shot to the kitchen's back door, and enough racket from the vents to cover the whine of a charging pulse rifle. She snatched a cloth napkin off the service stand, her fingers closing around the pen she used for taking orders. The note came out in a quick, tight scribble. Phony waiter, packing heat, left side. She folded the napkin into a neat little square to hide the words and picked up a dessert menu, using it to cover her approach. The walk over to Dreovar's table felt like trudging through the high-gravity chambers at the academy she'd bailed on 3 years ago. Every step was a struggle, but her eyes stayed locked on the fake server. All around her, the cantina was just business as usual. A Benzari trader was squawking about exchange rates. A couple of council cops were knocking back off-duty drinks. A table of miners were celebrating a big score with shots of some glowing blue hooch that probably wasn't fit for human beings. Dreovar glanced up as she got closer, his gold eyes locking on her like a hawk spotting a mouse. Madison had served the guy for months, and they'd never said more than a hello and thank you, keeping that professional wall up that a guy like him demanded. But tonight, she was about to kick that wall down with a piece of intel that could either save his skin or get her spaced. "Your dessert choices for the evening," she said, her voice holding surprisingly steady as she set the menu down, sliding the folded napkin right under his right claw. "Just holler if you need anything else." His huge hand came down over the napkin, and a single talon gently lifted the corner, revealing her warning. The change in him was tiny, a slight narrowing of those gold eyes, a twitch of his wings, the way his tail went still. But Madison saw the exact second the penny dropped. His eyes met hers for exactly 2 heartbeats, and in that short look, she saw a brain working that was way smarter than some dumb beast. He got it, and he seemed, well, maybe even a little impressed. Dreovar rose to his feet with a smoothness that shouldn't be possible for something his size, the move making his sword scrape against the table with a soft metallic hiss. He tucked the napkin into a pocket on his leather vest, which was cut special to fit around his wings, and started walking toward the kitchen door like he owned the place. The shift supervisor just had time to look baffled before Dreovar pushed through the swinging doors into the back. The fake server's head whipped toward the empty booth the second he realized Dreovar was gone. His whole professional vibe just cracked wide open, showing something real desperate underneath. His hand started moving for the inside of his jacket, not even trying to play the part anymore. Madison made herself keep walking her route, snatching up empty glasses and swapping out napkins while her brain was hollering about what happens to regular folks who stick their noses in mob business. The kitchen doors flew open and out came Dreovar, with 2 dudes Madison knew as regulars who always camped out by the emergency exits. One was a Canondorian, and the glowy patterns on his skin were flashing pure trouble. The other guy was human, but his left arm was some kind of custom chrome job you for sure couldn't buy off the shelf. They moved like a well-oiled machine, heading straight for the fake server's spot. You could see the dude doing the math in his head. Fight or run, the brutal numbers of staying alive when you're totally screwed. He picked run, backing up toward the main doors while keeping his hand ready to pull his piece. But Dreovar was already there, cutting him off. His huge self was blocking the whole damn exit, no questions asked. The The dragon had his comm pressed to his ear, and Madison could hear him spitting in rapid-fire Draconic, a language that sounded like a rock slide in a thunderstorm having a baby. The fake server spun toward the other emergency door by the trash chutes, dropping the act completely and shoving past some couple that was celebrating. That emergency door should have set off every alarm in the station when he slammed the bar, but all he got was dead silence. Somebody had jacked the system, either the faker for his getaway or Dravar's crew. Like he knew this was coming, Dravar walked right through the same door with this stone-cold calm that made the little rabbit part of Madison's brain scream bloody murder. The door hissed shut behind him, and somehow that was way creepier than any alarm would have been. His two buddies posted up at the exit, making damn sure no one got curious about what was about to go down in that hallway. The rest of the joint just kept on grooving like nothing happened. The band, a trio of bug-looking Caraxians, kept playing their tunes that sounded like math turned into music, not missing a single beat. Couples were slurping down fancy cocktails that changed color every time they took a sip. Business types were sealing deals by touching whatever arms or tentacles they had, and the station cops just kept yapping about office politics. The difference between the normal scene and the beatdown, Madison knew was happening just a few feet away, made her feel like she was seeing things through a busted mirror. She picked up bits and pieces of chatter between the hostess and one of the old-timer servers. They were guessing everything from a surprise health inspection to some celebrity drama. But all their theories tiptoed around what they had to know deep down, that Quasar's wasn't just slinging booze and grub. It was a place where the straight and narrow crossed paths with the crooked, where a delicate peace was kept, and where that peace had just been smashed to bits. The noises from the service hall were short and to the point. The high-pitched whine of a pulse weapon getting cut off, the thud of something real heavy hitting metal, and then nothing. The medic training Madison got in her 3 semesters at the academy gave her all the gory details of what those sounds meant for the fake server's future health. She was just frozen there by Dravar's empty booth, the tray of glasses totally forgotten as she strained her ears for any clue about how it ended. 90 seconds went by before Dravar came back through the emergency door. He looked exactly the same. No blood on his scales, not a single rip in his fancy vest. He wasn't even breathing hard, but something behind his gold eyes was sharper now. It was the look of a hunter who just made his kill. The manager poofed up next to him with the kind of speed you only see from a guy whose job depends on smoothing this stuff over. In just a few minutes, the manager was telling the customers that a little hiccup with the air conditioning meant they had to clear out this section for a bit. Drinks were on the house up in Quasar's top-floor lounge, and everyone's tab would get a 30% discount for the trouble. The crowd shuffled out, like people who knew better than to make a fuss, grabbing their stuff and following the staff to the other bar. Madison ended up in the employee locker room, her hands shaking while she changed out of her uniform. The other servers were whispering all kinds of stories, carefully saying anything but the truth, and they'd shut up quick whenever a manager walked by. She'd just put away her work clothes when her personal comm buzzed with a message from a blocked number. Package waiting at docking bay 73. Transportation arranged. That docking bay was in a lockdown part of the station, the kind of place Madison couldn't get into. But when she got there, the security guard just waved her right on through, didn't even scan her ID. The bay had just one ship in it, a private yacht with markings she recognized as Dravar's personal ride. The dragon himself was standing on the ramp, his huge body framed by the light from inside the ship. "What you did tonight, it had consequences," he said, getting straight to it. His voice had this rumble that made her bones vibrate. "The guy you pointed out was just one piece of a bigger puzzle. The Helix Syndicate will know their man failed, and they'll come looking for why." Madison felt that sink into her gut like a chunk of ice. The Helix Syndicate made Dravar's whole operation look like a book club. Those guys ran whole systems out on the frontier and were known for getting real creative with their payback on anyone who messed with their business. "I just saw something messed up and did something," she said, and was shocked at how steady her voice was. "I didn't mean to get into the middle of whatever this is." "What you meant to do don't matter," Dravar shot back. His tail was swishing back and forth, a sign he was thinking hard. "You saved my life. In my culture, that's a debt. It's got to be made right. On top of that, you're a target now. The Helix Syndicate doesn't leave loose ends." The inside of the yacht was all slick, quiet money. The walls looked like polished rock but were probably tough enough to stop a blaster bolt. There was art from a dozen different worlds in fancy cases and a command center that looked like it belonged on a battleship, not some rich guy's toy. Drevar led her to a meeting room where a few other people were waiting. They were a mixed bag of species and looked like they knew how to handle themselves, so she figured this was his inner circle. "This is the human female who gave the warning," Drevar said, not bothering with names. "She'll need the full protection package until we get this Helix situation sorted." A guy with a skull full of surgical scars spoke up first. "The smart play is to move her. We got safe houses in 12 systems where the Helix Syndicate ain't got no reach. Running makes it look like we're scared," the Canon Dorian from the bar countered. His glowy skin was flashing patterns that looked pissed off. "Better to use her as bait, draw him out on our terms." The talk that came after that was full of words that made Madison's stomach clench. Acceptable losses, sending a message, turf war fallout. They were talking about her like she was a poker chip, not a person. Her whole life was just a move in some big, ugly game she'd stumbled into. But when she looked over at Drevar, she saw something in those gold eyes that told her he hated this conversation just as much as she did. "Enough!" he finally rumbled, his voice slicing right through the argument. "She acted to save my life, expected nothing back. By the old laws of my people, that makes her kin. We protect her like she's one of our own." The whole room went dead silent. Madison didn't get all the heavy cultural stuff, but from the looks on their faces, Drevar had just made a promise that was way bigger than just bodyguards. The Canon Dorian's patterns blinked into what looked like surprise, and the dude with the scarred-up face actually looked like he respected the move. "Your mother," Drevar said, turning to Madison so fast it caught her off guard. "She's at the Ganymede Veterans Facility, low security, an easy target for a snatch and grab or to be used as leverage." Madison's blood ran cold. She hadn't told a soul at Quasar's about her mom, had been super careful to keep her life on the down low. The fact that Drevar knew meant his crew had already done a deep dive on her, probably in the first few minutes after the whole thing went down. "We'll move her to our own med center on Station Phobos," he kept going. "The care's better than what she's getting now, and she'll be guarded by people who know that this whole hospitals are a safe zone thing is a fairy tale when syndicates are in play." The offer was a godsend and terrifying all at once. Madison's mom never really got over the Europa 12 attacks, and her anxiety needed constant treatment that Madison could barely swing, even on a Quasar's salary. The promise of better care was a huge carrot, but it came with the stick of knowing she was getting pulled deeper and deeper into Drevar's world. "I need to think," she managed to say, even though she knew she'd already made her choice the second she wrote that warning on the napkin. "Think fast," Drevar replied, glancing at his watch. "The Helix Syndicate will have gotten word their guy failed within the hour. And just like that, I had a target painted on my back. The next 3 days were a total whirlwind of getting moved around and getting my mind blown. Drevar's crew cleared out my dinky little place with scary efficiency, hauling all my stuff to some new digs in Omega-7's lockdown zone, the part of town where the corporate suits and top-dog criminals kept their pads behind what felt like a million layers of security. My new apartment took up a whole damn floor of a building that looked residential on the outside, but was built like a freaking military bunker. They moved my mom with the kind of precision you'd see from a surgical team. I watched the whole thing on security feeds as a pro crew transferred her from Ganymede to Station Pharos. The whole operation was cloaked to look like a routine medevac. My mom, knocked out for the trip to keep her from freaking out, never had a clue she was being moved to keep her safe. The new joint was everything Drevar had promised. Top-of-the-line medtech, a staff that knew their stuff when it came to trauma, and security that included ex-Special Forces badasses from 3 different species. My new normal was built around not getting myself killed. Quasar's was a no-go, too public, way too easy to predict. But Drevar hooked me up with a job at one of his legit businesses, a clinic that took care of the station's have-nots. My half-assed academy training actually came in handy for patching up everything from radiation burns to knife wounds. Though the clinic's don't ask, don't tell policy on how people got their injuries took some getting used to, the Helix Syndicate finally made their move on a Wednesday, exactly 1 week after they tried to whack me. I was going over patient files when my security detail, two Canondorians who could blind you with their glow-in-the-dark skin, suddenly went on high alert. Their skin flared up with warning signals as they planted themselves right between me and the clinic's front door. Three figures strolled in with the kind of swagger you see on people who expect their reputation to do all the talking. I recognized the species. Nexari, silicon-based life forms with crystal bodies that could bounce most energy shots right off. They moved with a sound like wind chimes, beautiful and deadly in one package. The leader, who you could spot by the deep purple veins running through his see-through body, walked up to the reception desk real slow. "We're looking for the human female who stuck her nose in our recent business," he said, his voice like a chorus of bells. "We hear she works here." Before I could even open my mouth, the clinic's back door swung open and Dravar walked in with 6 of his crew. The dragon's presence just sucked all the air out of the room, his wings half spread in a power move that made the ceiling feel a whole lot lower. His golden eyes locked on the head Nexari like he was sizing up a meal. "This is a medical facility," Dravar said, his voice holding that dead calm that always comes before the storm. "The Helix Syndicate knows the rules about neutral zones." The Nexari's crystal body flashed different colors, his purple veins pulsing with what I could tell was pure aggravation. "Rules are for places that are actually neutral. This joint is yours, which makes it fair game." "So you're declaring war," Dravar shot back, his tail starting that slow, rhythmic tap I'd learned meant he was running the odds on a fight. All this over one human who went with her gut instead of a paycheck. The standoff dragged on for 30 seconds that felt like hours. I could hear my own heart hammering, and I saw the other clinic staff frozen in place like they were used to being collateral damage in wars between the syndicates. My Canondorian detail had already moved to flank the Nexari, their skin now flashing combat patterns that would overload most species' eyeballs. "The female comes with us, or this gets ugly," the lead Nexari finally said. "The Helix Syndicate doesn't tolerate interference." Dravar let out a laugh that sounded like thunder on a leash. "You think I give a damn about your syndicate's reputation? I've eaten things scarier than your entire organization." The insult just hung there in the air, a straight-up challenge, and I saw the exact moment that talking was over. The Nexari's crystal body started to hum, building up to that sonic blast his kind was famous for. But Dravar was already moving. His massive frame closed the distance between them faster than anything his size had a right to. His sword was out of its sheath in a flash you couldn't even follow, the ancient blade singing through the air. The strike never even landed. The Nexari shattered his own body, exploding into a cloud of silicon dust that reformed 6 feet away, a survival trick that would take him months to recover from, but kept him from being sliced in two. His buddies were already bugging out, knowing that a throwdown with an armed draconic in a tight space was just a fancy way to commit suicide, no matter how many of them there were. "Tell the Helix Syndicate that the human is under draconic protection," Dravar said, sliding his sword back home with a deliberate, slow grace. "If they want her, they go through me, and I haven't had a proper war in decades. I might enjoy the exercise." The Nexari pulled himself back together completely, his crystal body now full of stress fractures from his emergency escape. "This isn't over," he said, but the threat sounded pretty hollow coming from a guy who just ran for the hills. "No," Dravar agreed, his golden eyes watching the Nexari's retreat, "but it's clarified your move." After the Nexari and his crew bailed, Dravar turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite figure out. "You get what just happened? I've basically just declared you're part of my clan. The Helix Syndicate will either accept that and back off, or we're going to have a war that makes the Spiral Sector conflicts look like a bar fight." "Why?" I asked, the word just falling out of my mouth before I could stop it. "I'm a nobody, a med school dropout working as a waitress. Why risk your entire organization for me?" Dravar was quiet for a second, his gold eyes studying me so intensely I felt like he could see right through my skin and into my soul. "You acted without thinking it through, when you could have just stayed invisible. In my experience, people who do that are either very stupid or very valuable. You're not stupid." The compliment, if that was what it was, hung in the air between us like a bridge I had to decide to cross. I found myself taking a step closer to the massive dragon, drawn by something that was bigger than just being grateful he'd saved my skin. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now you learn to be what you've always been," Drava replied. "Someone who sees what others miss and acts when others freeze, but with proper training and resources instead of just going on instinct alone." The weeks that followed turned me from a protected asset into an active player in Dravar's organization. I learned how to read the messed-up dynamics of station politics, to spot the subtle tells that came before a syndicate war popped off, and how to walk the line in the gray areas where legit and illegal business crossed paths. My hyper-awareness, which used to be just a trauma response, became a professional skill that Dravar's people taught me how to turn into a weapon. The clinic job kept going, but now I understood its real purpose. It wasn't just about giving medical care to the poor. It was an intelligence-gathering operation where injuries told you stories about what the syndicates were up to and who was fighting over turf. A spike in radiation burns meant somebody was hijacking shipments near the jump points. An increase in knife wounds meant the Canondorian gangs were pushing into new territory. Every patient was a data point in the screwed-up math of organized crime. My mother's condition got a hell of a lot better at the new facility. The specialized treatment for her anxiety, combined with security that meant she wasn't constantly looking over her shoulder, had stabilized her in a way I hadn't thought was possible. Our weekly video calls showed a woman who was laughing more, worrying less, and had even started painting again, something she hadn't done since Europa 12. My relationship with Dravar was changing in ways I don't think either of us really got. He'd pop into the clinic during my shifts, pretending to be reviewing operations, but really he was there to talk about ancient draconic poetry or debate the ethics of using violence to create order. I learned that his species had a crazy complex honor code that made human morality look like kid stuff, that his sword had been in his clan for 900 standard years, and that he'd gotten into organized crime not because he was greedy, but because it was the only way to protect his people in a galaxy that saw his kind as either weapons for hire or walking threats. "Your species fears mine," he told me one evening as we stood on his private balcony looking out over the station's main commercial drag. "We're too strong, too predatory, too willing to throw down when threatened. The Galactic Council puts limits on our jobs, restricts our travel, and even monitors how many kids we have. Crime is one of the few careers where being feared is an asset instead of a liability." I watched the station's lights flicker like earthbound stars, feeling the sheer weight of his presence next to me. He could have killed me a dozen times over, could have torn through the station's hull with his bare claws if he got the urge. But I'd seen him spend 3 hours teaching some young Vorton kid how to properly care for blade weapons, had watched him anonymously donate millions of credits to refugee relief funds, and had seen for myself the careful way he protected the people under his command. "Well, hell, you ain't what I pictured," she finally let out. A deep chuckle vibrated up from the floorboards of the balcony. "What? You were expecting some thug playing at being noble, or a good man who got his hands dirty?" Madison shot back. "Maybe some guy who spouts fancy words right before he tells his crew to whack someone. It just don't add up." "Life's all tangled up like that," Drava rumbled, the station's glow dancing in his gold eyes. "To keep folks safe, I gotta show my teeth. To keep the peace, I gotta break it sometimes. And how I feel about you, my people ain't got the words for it. All I can do is stick close and keep you from harm." That confession just hung there between them, a dare for her to step forward. Madison swung around to look him dead in the eye, her hand lifting to press against the scales on his arm. It felt like no skin she'd ever known, like warm rock with a bit of give, but with a deep-down hardness that felt like it could stop a damn train. "Yeah, well, this wasn't in my 5-year plan," she breathed. 3 months back, I was just hustling for enough creds to maybe get back into med school. And look at me now, playing coroner for a dragon mob boss while ducking a syndicate that's got my name on a bullet." "Second thoughts?" Drava asked, the slow swish of his tail telling her he was actually worried. "It's messy," Madison admitted, "but I ain't sorry." The Helix Syndicate decided to make their big play on a Thursday, because apparently every lowlife in the galaxy gets a hard-on for Thursdays. Madison was back slinging drinks at Quar's, reopened and locked down tight, working her old corner just for the hell of it. Drovar was holding court in his usual booth, but tonight his muscle wasn't hiding in the shadows. You had 4 Canondorians lit up like neon signs screaming, back off, in 12 different tongues. A couple of humans so chromed up they looked like war machines, and a Deveran with a skull so busted up you knew he'd walk through hell and spit in the devil's eye. The hit came from out of nowhere, right through the kitchen. Turns out the Helix crew had swapped out the whole damn cooking staff with their own goons. They poured out of the prep station like soldiers, not short-order cooks. Madison's eyes caught him first. Her gut screamed a warning as dudes in chef's whites started moving with the kind of training you don't get in culinary school. No time for scribbling on napkins this go-around. She whipped her serving tray like a damn frisbee, and the metal rang off the lead hitter's temple like a church bell. That clang bought Drovar's crew 2 seconds to get in the game, and that was all the time they needed. The whole joint exploded into what you might call organized mayhem, with bodyguards jumping the intruders while the regulars hit the deck. Drovar himself unleashed a storm that showed everybody why his kind used to be the boogeymen of the galaxy. His blade sliced through the air, moving in ways that didn't seem quite right, every swing a death sentence. Some Helix punk tried to get the drop on him from the side and found out the hard way that a dragon's tail hits like a wrecking ball. The blow launched the goon clean through a reinforced window. The station's emergency field snapped on just before he got sucked out into the big empty. Next thing she knew, Madison was back-to-back with one of the glowing Canondorian guards, armed with nothing but trays and whatever she could grab from the kitchen. Her med school training was thin, but it taught her basic patch-up work and exactly where to hit a guy to make him sit down and shut up. Some Nexari crystal man found out his fancy body didn't like sudden chills when she splashed him with liquid nitrogen from the bar's fancy drink machine. He went to pieces like a dropped glass, a mess that had taken months to pull back together. The whole scrap was over in 4 minutes and 17 seconds. By the time station security moseyed on in, taking their sweet damn time, the cantina was a total wreck. Tables were flipped, glass was everywhere, and the band's gear was strewn across the floor like a busted-up puzzle. But there was no question who won. Drovar's crew had mopped the floor with them. The Helix boys were either bagged or tagged. The head Nexari, the same one from the clinic, was one of the survivors, his crystal hide held together with emergency goo. Drovar walked up to him, as calm as you please, like the whole bloodbath was just another day at the office. "Take a message back to your bosses," the dragon's voice echoed through the wreckage. "The human is family now. Anyone so much as looks at her funny again, and it's all-out war. I got 17 systems I can bring to bear. You really think your 100 trigger men want to dance with 3,000 of my boys who've been champing at the bit for a real throwdown?" The Nexari let out a high-pitched hum that screamed, "Uncle." The Helix Syndicate had juice, sure, but they weren't stupid, risking a war that would gut both sides and get the Galactic Council breathing down their necks, all for one human. Bad business. "We stand down," the Nexari finally ground out, the words tasting like ash. "The human is recognized as kin to the Draconic clan. The Helix Syndicate acknowledges it, and the word will go out." That wasn't just about keeping her safe. In the twisted pecking order of the underworld, Madison just went from being on the menu to being off-limits to everyone. Anybody who messed with her from now on wasn't just picking a fight with Drovar, they were poking his entire damn race with a stick. Even the greediest syndicate boss would have to be crazy to pull that trigger. The station cops finally started rounding up the leftovers, moving with a speed that made you think they'd been waiting just outside for the fireworks to stop. The captain, a 4-armed Quellian with a shell that shined under the flashing emergency lights, looked over the mess with something that looked a hell of a lot like a smile. "Mr. Drovar," he said, all official-like, but his voice told you they weren't strangers. "Let me guess, they started it." "Roll the tapes," Drovar shot back, a flick of his tail telling Madison he was enjoying this. "We were just trying to have a peaceful meal when these fellas busted in through the kitchen. Awful manners, if you ask me. The grub here is way too good to be spoiled by a gunfight." The captain's jaws clicked together, which was how his kind laughed. "Gonna need to take statements, but I got a feeling the official report will say you were well within your rights to defend yourself from a bunch of armed yahoos." Madison gave her side of the story while the medics patched up the cuts and bruises on the staff and customers. The shakes had finally left her hands, but the adrenaline dump left her feeling bone-tired and a little loopy. She'd just lived through a damn mob hit, helped take down paid killers with pots and pans, and somehow got adopted into a dragon crime family. Her mom would have had a fit, and maybe been just a little bit proud. Drova found her in the break room once the lawman had cleared out. His huge body took up the whole doorway, and she could see a couple of his scales were cracked from the brawl. She knew they grew back, but she'd also heard it hurt like a son of a bitch. "You chucked a serving tray at a man with a gun," he stated, his voice a mix of disbelief and respect. "That was either gutsy as hell or just plain crazy." "Picked it up from watching you," Madison quipped, waving a hand in his direction. "You charge 3 guys with a sword that belongs in a museum. Don't talk to me about rational." He stepped all the way in, dipping his head to keep from smashing the lights. "Guess that makes us a matched pair of crazies then." There was more to what he said than just the words, and Madison found herself on her feet, walking right up to him. The size of him next to her was almost funny. She barely came up to his chest, even with him stooped over. But when he lifted a clawed hand to her cheek, he touched her so gently you'd think she was made of sugar glass. "This life I'm putting on the table, it ain't normal," he said, his voice low and his gold eyes dead serious. "You'll be looking over your shoulder for the rest of your days, always mapping out the exits. That jumpiness you got from all the bad times, it'll have to be how you live now." "You think normal was ever in the cards for me?" Madison shot back. "I was clocking every door and face in a room before I was old enough to know why. At least now it's for something real, not just fighting the shakes." "Your mother," Drova pushed on, like he had a checklist of worries to get through. "She'll have the best of everything, always. But they'll see her as a weakness, a handle to get a grip on you. We can guard her, but she'll never be 100% safe." "Ha, she ain't been safe since what happened on Europa 12, Madison said. "But you know what? For the first time in years, she's actually painting again. That place you set her up in has given her a quiet I couldn't have bought with a lifetime of punching a clock." Drovar's tail coiled soft and warm around her waist, a touch so personal it was something his people only did with blood kin. "You get what you're signing up for, right? When we say your clan, that's for life. There's no quitting, no walking away when the road gets rocky. It's a done deal." Madison's hand went up to trace the ridges on one of his horns, feeling the history etched into it that she was just starting to figure out. "I scribbled 9 words on a piece of paper and my whole world flipped upside down. Ever since, it's been about owning my choices or running from them. And I'm so damn tired of running." The kiss that came next was a clumsy affair, what with their different shapes and sizes. She had to get up on her toes to reach his muzzle, and his tail had to hold her steady. But what was behind it all, that feeling, it didn't need any translation. 6 months down the road, you'd find Madison in the medbay on Drovar's main ship, stitching up his boys after the latest scuffle with some rival outfit over turf. She was geared up now, rocking custom-fit armor stamped with draconic clan marks that basically screamed off-limits to anyone who knew what's what. That old hyper-awareness of hers had sharpened into a straight-up tactical 6th sense, making her the MVP on ops. She'd catch threats and openings everyone else was blind to. Her mom had totally gotten on board with her daughter's weird new life, even starting to run art therapy sessions for other trauma survivors over at the station's Pharos facility. The old lady had even met Drovar once, during a carefully staged meet and greet. She was scared stiff of the giant dragon at first, but then she saw the crazy, careful way he watched over her daughter. "He's not exactly who I pictured for you," her mom told her on the down low later. "But I see he's got your back. That's what counts, more than what species he is or if it's even legal." The Helix Syndicate actually kept their word and backed off, though Madison would still spot their guys kicking around the station sometimes. They'd just give her a respectful nod and keep their distance, knowing she'd moved up in the underworld food chain. Other outfits had learned the hard way that Drauva's protection was no joke. A couple of crews tried making small plays against her, only to watch their entire operations get dismantled piece by piece over a few weeks. "What's the butcher's bill?" Drovar asked, using his usual duck and shimmy move to squeeze through the medbay door. His left wing was scorched with fresh laser burns from the last dust-up, but he carried it with that don't-give-a-damn attitude about pain his kind was known for. 17 patched up. "All good," Madison shot back, finishing up stitches on a Kenoran whose glowing skin patterns were flashing a thank you. "You know, I bet we could cut these injuries in half if your boys would just wear some real armor instead of trying to get by on reputation and scary faces." His laugh boomed through the med bay. "Where's the sport in that? Besides, scars are stories. This little beauty," he motioned to his busted wing, "says I kept hijackers off some valuable cargo. Makes the next crew that gets ideas think twice. And by valuable cargo, you mean the hot salvage you lifted from the Titan Mining Corporation?" Madison deadpanned, already knowing the answer. "I mean the medical supplies that Titan was sitting on while frontier colonies were getting eaten alive by radiation plague," Dreova corrected. "Just because we're outlaws doesn't mean we don't have a code." And he was right. Madison had figured out that Drevar's crew played in the gray areas, but they had a set of rules that, if you looked at it right, made them seem like the good guys. They ran meds into quarantine systems, protected settlements the Galactic Council couldn't be bothered with, and kept the peace in sectors where the official cops were too chicken to go. They weren't criminals because they were bad people. They were criminals because the law didn't give a damn about necessity. "On another note," Dreova said, his voice shifting into that all-business tone she knew well, "the Galactic Council is dangling a get-out-of-jail-free card for crews that register as private security. We'd get a badge, some immunity, and a license to operate clean in most systems." Madison stopped what she was doing, turning to look him dead in the eye. "That's the dream, isn't it? For your people to go legit, to have protection you don't have to fight for." "It would mean big changes," he went on. "More oversight, gigs that pay less, and cutting deals with guys I've been fighting for decades. But it would also mean you could be a doctor without constantly watching your back. Your mom could come visit without a tactical squad, and we could—" He let the thought hang there, but Madison got it. Hooking up across species lines was messy enough without your boyfriend being a wanted crime lord. Going legit would tear down the walls that made their relationship a freak show at best, and a major liability at worst. "Do it," she said, not even blinking. "Your people deserve more than scraping by on the fringes. And hey, maybe the galaxy could use some security guys who get that just because it's legal doesn't make it right." Dreova's tail coiled around her waist, pulling her in with a gentle power. "You know, this whole thing kicked off with you giving me a heads up about trouble. Now you're pushing me to go respectable. You've got a bad habit of trying to keep me alive." "Someone has to," Madison shot back, reaching up to trace the scars on his scales. "You dragons are useless at self-preservation when honor's on the line. The whole switch took 3 solid months of backroom deals, mountains of paperwork, and carefully taking apart their criminal enterprises to build up legit ones. Not everyone in Dreova's crew was on board. Some of the guys were career outlaws who couldn't stomach the idea of rules. But the smart ones saw the writing on the wall, a chance to use their skills without always looking over their shoulder for the law. The Dreova Security Corporation launched with contracts from 3 systems that had been getting hammered by syndicate thugs. Their first big gig was busting up a hostage situation on Mining Platform 7, where some raiders had grabbed a whole work crew. Madison was glued to the feed in the command center, watching Dreova lead the breach in person, his hulking frame and ancient sword proving just as lethal as any plasma rifle in the platform's tight hallways. "Your tactical read was flawless," he told her later, as they went over the op in their quarters. "The whole apartment was tricked out to handle his size, with beefed-up furniture and ceilings high enough for him to stand straight. You pegged their defensive spots from heat signatures alone." "Just pattern recognition," Madison murmured, tucked up against his warm side on their custom-built couch. "It's the same thing that lets me spot a phony waiter, just a different application." Her comm pinged with a message from her mom. It was a photo of her newest painting, a dragon shielding a small human figure from a wild, abstract storm. The message wasn't exactly subtle, but the art itself was incredible, showing a kind of peace her mother hadn't been able to paint in years. "She's painting us," Dreova rumbled, his gold eyes fixed on the image. "I'm not usually purple, though. That's called artistic license. She's painting hope, Dreova." Madison corrected softly, a real sense of peace washing over her for the first time since Europa 12. She actually believes we have a future, enough to see it in color. They just sat there in a comfortable quiet, watching the lights of Station Omega 7 sparkle through the armored windows. The station felt like a different world in the months after the showdown with Helix. Sure, there was still crime, but the full-blown gang wars had pretty much dried up. With the Dravar Security Corporation on the scene, the syndicates thought twice before starting beef, and the company's free clinics gave people a way out of the criminal life if they wanted it. "You know, I never really thanked you," Drova said out of the blue, "for that first heads up." Madison chuckled. "You made me part of your clan, fought a syndicate war, and totally flipped your organization upside down. I think we're square." "No," he insisted, his tone dead serious. "That was all duty, honor, keeping you safe. But I never just said thank you for spotting a threat to a stranger you had no reason to care about and deciding to do something." She turned to really look at him, seeing past the scales and the horns and the whole apex predator vibe to the person underneath. "You're welcome. Although, if I'd known it would lead to me dating a dragon mob boss turned corporate security chief, I might have been a bit more specific with my warning." His laugh shook the entire apartment, tripping the proximity alarms in the neighboring units, whose owners had long since learned to ignore the random dragon quakes. "Too late for take-backsies now. Draconic clan bonds are for life, remember?" "I remember," Madison said, leaning back into his warmth. "Best snap decision I ever made." The years that followed just kept proving her right. The Dravar Security Corporation became the top private security crew in 7 systems, famous for taking on the impossible jobs that others ran from and winning where the official law had failed. Madison launched a network of medical clinics that would treat anyone, whether they could pay or not, bankrolled by the corporation's success but run completely on their own. Her on-edge instincts never went away. She still clocked every exit, memorized every face, and filed away every potential threat. But now it was a tool she used to protect the life she'd built, not just a scar from the trauma she'd inherited. She could sniff out a mole in a client's organization, diagnose medical problems nobody else saw, and deliver tactical breakdowns that saved lives on missions. Her mother lived long enough to see her daughter officially tie the knot with Draovar in a ceremony that was part human, part draconic. The older woman, despite being a bundle of nerves, showed up in person, surrounded by security but genuinely beaming. "You found someone who gets what it's like to always be watching," she told Madison, seeing how Drova never missed a single detail when it came to her daughter's safety. That's more important than what species he is or what anyone thinks is normal. The ceremony itself was kept small, just family and the inner circle. But the news made huge waves in both the underworld and the corporate world. A human being officially brought into a draconic clan through marriage? It was completely unheard of. It shattered old beliefs about interspecies romance and whether a criminal could ever truly go straight. Standing on the observation deck of their new flagship, an old military dreadnought they'd refitted for security ops, Madison watched Dravar run the show for their latest mission. He still moved with that same deadly grace she'd noticed all those years ago, only now it was all about protecting people, not threatening them. His golden eyes found hers across the chaos of the command center, and they warmed with a deep affection his kind usually only showed for clanmates they'd known for centuries. "Tactical assessment?" he rumbled, bringing up a hollow display of their objective. The local cops swore they couldn't find this slaver ring, but it was hiding in plain sight. Madison was glued to the thermal scans, clocking patrol routes. Her brain was just hardwired to spot screw-ups and openings. The third shift changeover was a joke, a total gap in their coverage. Figures. The local 5-0 were definitely on the take. "Right here," she pointed to a maintenance shaft. "We can slip a crew in while we raise some hell over at the main dock." Dravar gave her a look, a smirk on his lips. "There's that Waitress brain of yours," he rumbled, but the flick of his tail said he was all for it. "Always looking for the weak spot, the blind angle." "Ex-Waitress," she shot back. "Now I'm the tactical brain, head doc, and if your people are to be believed, the clan matriarch, which, by the way, sounds absolutely bonkers for a human." "You earned it," he said, his eyes fixed on the hollow display again. "Now, walk me through a plan that gets this done clean." We're legit security now, not some syndicate goon squad. We've got a rep to protect." The op went off without a hitch. They freed 87 souls and bagged the whole damn trafficking crew, barely throwing a punch. Back at their medbay, Madison got to work on the survivors. Her crew wasn't just patching up bodies, they were trying to piece minds back together too. Most of them were refugees from the outer colonies, folks the system had just forgotten about. Exactly the kind of people she'd wanted to help before med school went south. That night, looking out from their private balcony with Drevar, she said, "You want to hear something crazy?" The whole of Station Omega-7 glittered beneath them, a man-made galaxy trying to outshine the real one. "I had to ditch med school because I was flat broke," she confessed. "Next thing I know, I'm slinging drinks for wise guys, and somehow that turns into me running a network of clinics across 7 systems." "Life's a crooked path," Drevar rumbled, draping a wing over her as a gust of recycled station air kicked up. "The galaxy's most notorious dragon mob boss goes straight, all because some waitress scribbled 9 words on a napkin." Madison just soaked in his warmth, the steady thrum of his 2 hearts a familiar comfort. That old habit of being on high alert hadn't faded, though. She instinctively clocked the timing of security patrols and caught a flicker of something off near docking bay 12. The lights in the apartment next door were still on, meaning the neighbors were up way past their bedtime. But details like that were just background noise now, not the panic-fueled triggers they used to be. "Ever think about it?" she murmured. "What if I just kept my mouth shut that night?" "I'd be pushing up daisies," Drevar said, no hesitation. "That helix hitter would have got me. My whole outfit would have ripped itself apart in a turf war, and you'd still be slinging synthale scraping by to pay for your mom's meds." His tail coiled tighter around her waist, pulling her in. It all shook out the way it was meant to. Wasn't pretty, and it sure as hell wasn't free, but it fits us. Madison's comm buzzed. It was a message from the clinic out on Faro Station. They just treated patient number 1000. That number felt huge, like real solid proof that they'd actually turned their whole operation around from a crime ring to something that did some good. Her mom's paintings were hanging on the walls there now, all these wild, hopeful colors that screamed at you that getting better was possible, no matter how beat up you were. "I ought to swing by tomorrow," Madison mused. "Give their ops a once-over, check their inventory, make sure they're keeping things tight." "Can't turn it off, can you?" Drevar noted. "Even when things are good, you're sniffing out trouble." "Hey, being jumpy has its perks," she shot back. "It kept your ass out of the fire. It built us this whole damn thing, and now it keeps the little guys safe." His laugh was a low rumble, like a storm miles away. "A whole empire, built on a warning scribbled on a bar napkin. The history nerds are going to have a field day with that one." "Let them scratch their heads," Madison said, leaning in to kiss his scaly jaw. "The real story is way crazier than anything they could dream up anyway." Above them, the stars spun on, distant suns lighting up worlds where Drevar security meant you were safe, especially if you were someone nobody else gave a damn about. Worlds where clinics with her name on them helped the folks the big-shot doctors ignored, where a human and a dragon showed everyone that being different species didn't mean a thing, that you could find honor in the sketchiest places, and that sometimes history turns on a dime just because one person decided to give a stranger a heads up. 9 little words on a napkin threw her whole world for a loop. But looking back, Madison knew that wasn't the real magic. The magic was that she'd written them in the first place, pushing down her own terror to help some guy she didn't owe a thing. That gut instinct to do something when it counted. That's what showed her who she really was underneath all the fear and the baggage. She was the one who noticed the details everyone else blew past, the one who moved when everyone else was stuck in their boots, the woman who could fall for a dragon and have him fall right back, building something good out of the mess that threw them together. And standing there, bundled up in the arms of a guy who used to be the boogeyman of 3 whole sectors, Madison knew deep in her bones that she was finally home. It wasn't the life she'd ever mapped out, but damn if it wasn't the one she was made for. A life where being jumpy was a superpower, not a problem. Where her mom was safe and sound, painting her heart out, and where she could fix people up while someone had her back. Below, the station was a sea of twinkling lights, every single one a life, a story, A risk, a chance. Madison took it all in, her brain always humming, sorting through the what-ifs even when everything was quiet. Only now, that constant buzzing in her head felt like having a mission, not being broken. "Penny for your thoughts?" Dravar asked, starlight glinting in his golden eyes. "Just that I'm right where I'm supposed to be," Madison said, "even if the road here was a real trip." His laugh boomed across the station, full of the sound of a killer who'd found his calm, a gangster gone legit, and a dragon who'd lucked into love where no one would have ever looked for it. So there they stood, watching the star-dusted black, two souls from opposite ends of the universe who had spun something incredible out of one brave moment and a message on a napkin. When you boiled it all down, that's what big changes were all about. Somebody deciding to do something when it counted, screw the consequences. Madison made that call in some dive bar years ago, and every single good thing that happened to her since branched out from that one gutsy move. And she wouldn't take back a single damn word of it.